Welcome to a special episode of UNDP Nepal's podcast series, which is looking to highlight Nepal's development journey and UNDP's work to support it over the last 60 years it has been in Nepal. In today's episode, we have two special guests whom I have the pleasure knowing them for a number of years to talk about some of the most crucial work that Nepal has done in the biodiversity and broader environmental sector. The role that UNDP has played to support this work and the next steps that Nepal should consider to build on its successes and the lessons learned. My name is Sagar Baral. I work for the International Snow Leopard Trust as the strategic lead for Nepal. And in the past, I have worked for Zoological Society of London, Himalayan Nature, and Bird Conservation Nepal. Now let's move to the introduction of the two distinguished guests that we have in this studio. First of all, Dr. Sunita Chaudhary. She is the biodiversity lead ecosystem services specialist at the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development, known as ICIMOD, which is a regional knowledge and learning center based in Kathmandu, and it is focused on improving the lives and environments of people living in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, serving countries like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, China, India, Myanmar, Nepal, and Pakistan. Our next guest is Dr. Krishna Prasad Acharya. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Who is the Secretary General of the South Asia Wildlife Enforcement Network, SAWEN, which works in 8 countries, including Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. He has also worked as Secretary at the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, and he has served as the Director General of the 2 departments under the Ministry of Forest and Environment, Department of Forest, and Department of National Parks and Wildlife Conservation. Both have been a key UNDP ally for its nature conservation projects in this country. So first of all, I would like to pose a query, starting with Dr. Acharya. You have seen Nepal's conservation landscape on the ground level, as well as at the national and international platforms that you have participated and contributed. What changes in wildlife conservation have been most striking over the course of your career? Please explain briefly.
Thank you, Dr. Hem. I think I would say since the mid-90s, Nepal has taken a new shift in conservation policies in Nepal. Government of Nepal took a move on expanding protected area system across the country, covering different threatened species ecosystem to put within in a protected mechanism. At the same time, the role of UNDP was there, where protected area system expansion was not an island of forest or areas, but very much connected with each other, and introducing the concept of landscape approach. That is very much crucial to change the Nepal's conservation landscape. At the same time, in the almost 1990 again, there was a big change from the government in Nepal in terms of policy, means sharing of benefit of protected system to the local community.
Yes.
And at the same time, UNDP worked through Park and People project how to operationalize on the ground. How that benefit sharing mechanism really does work, how much to share, to whom to share, when to share, and in which area it could be much beneficial to the local community. So that really reduced the gap between the community and the park. These are the two. Another, I think, the most important work done again in the 90s was, mid-90s or early 2000 was the role of engaging the local people in protected system management.
So basically, I think you have nicely said that the gradual shift from protecting species and then protecting the parks at the gunpoint,
Yes.
moving to the
Participatory community engagement.
conservation,
Yes, that's true.
and again the landscape level conservation and that kind of shift.
Yeah, benefit sharing is, also
Benefit sharing.
brought a new idea of that, how local people residing in the park can use the forest resources. At the
Yes.
same time,
Yeah.
how the income from the park can be invested in their area with their own choice to increase their livelihood, to increase their capacity, to increase their skill.
Yeah.
So that was the greatest part. And
Yeah.
again, I would say that outcome was mainly through the Park People project that was started by UNDP.
Park and People project, as well as the participatory conservation program,
Yes,
which
yes,
was
that's,
later followed and funded by UNDP
that's true.
together with the government of Nepal. So that's a really important point, actually, how the community really took the ownership and how they saw the benefits coming by protecting the national parks and wildlife reserves. That's very important. Dr. Sunita, do you have something to add on it?
I think what I would like to really pick up on is about the people-centered approach for conservation.
Absolutely.
And I think all the stakeholders in Nepal, including UNDP, has really played an important role in bringing people on board along with the conservation, but also putting development aspects towards the sustainable pathway. So I would just like to put that into the argument that conservation is not only for the species itself. Conservation is for them, but by people and for the people. So I think UNDP, including other stakeholders, the government of Nepal especially Nepal has been a pioneer in conservation, and we know this very well from Tarai up to Himalayan landscape, that people is at the center, and then UNDP has, I think, played an important role to really establish that argument that conservation is for people and by people. So I'd just like to emphasize that argument.
I can add one point is the introduction of the concept of landscape management really recognize that the animals are not limited within the park.
Absolutely.
And they need corridor, they need connectivity. I think it is the Western Tarai landscape initiation really beginning to introduce the concept of corridors and connectivity, which is very important considering the forest area outside the particular system.
Yeah. So I'll go to Dr. Sunita now. So based on your vast field experience, Dr. Sunita, could you share with us one story that you think really captures the essence of Nepal's conservation success? Please also tell us about the challenges that still remain with conservation work in Nepal.
I still remember when I was still a child hearing about all the soils were going to Bay of Bengal and becoming an island in Bangladesh. So I can recall from my childhood like how those, Nepal, I was reflecting on myself, how the soils were eroded from Nepal, from red hills going back to the Bangladesh. And now from that scenario, if we see the 4-5 decades from now, from that red hill, now we are getting money, 9.4 billion to like forest carbon to now. So if you see all the history from red hills, now we are, I would say, still green hills. And because of these green hills, we have been receiving this $9.4 million through forest. So at that time, if we see all the history and everything, we had around like 21% of the forest. And now we have around 47% of the forest. And because of that, we are getting a lot of money. But the challenges still remains. If we see, especially during winter, even in the news everywhere, and Kathmandu is on the top list of air pollution. And why is that? We need to go beyond this and we need to dissect this argument. Why Kathmandu is one of the most polluted cities, especially during winter season. Yeah. It's because of the forest fire during the winter season. And if we see all around, all our forests are gray. So we can see all this, while we have received a lot of conservation success from red to green, but now if I put up, I see these green forests are becoming gray forest. I think the people have not been incentivized for the efforts they have put in managing this forest for long. And then I think the scenario had changed quite a lot. Before, our life was so much focused on like fuel, basic needs, but now we are so much like market mechanism system, and those market mechanism system has not been systemized in our forestry system. So I think that's, and what I want to also add in terms of success, that protected area system, of course the species are protected, people are getting benefit, but if we see the mid hills, we do not have a good protected area system, and that's it's not a good representation in our protected area network. But because of community forestry, we have been able to conserve and protect like a good number of flagship species like Chinese pangolin, and especially birds like the spiny babbler, and also like red panda, Himalayan black bear. So even without protection system, because of these restoration efforts, we have been able to save these protected species. So I think that's our success.
Now the time has come, to review our conservation policy, and I think now to expand. I also agree or saying protected area system doesn't really represent all ecosystem and species across the country. So now we should move ahead with the new approach of this, what it called OECM, other effective area-based conservation measure, which has high potential of conserving those species in the landscape outside protected area system, as you said. And this approach, I think, Nepal is just moving on this, should scale up and capture the remaining ecosystem and species by this mechanism.
So, Dr. Acharya, with UNDP's long support for protected areas, which interventions do you think made the biggest difference for flagship species?
I think we little bit talked about this earlier. Again, I would say the intervention that was supported operationalizing of benefit sharing mechanism, that in the National Park Act, 30 to 50% benefit going to the community. That is the first. And with this, link with this was how this benefit, to invest in what area to build the ownership of local community really can reach to the most needed people. For example, there are several skill development training, local small development activities within the community, and then how to utilize the mechanism of buffer zone council, buffer zone committee, and those. Absolutely. So that intervention was the one important. Second important, and now I have time to explain more, is about this concept of corridor and connectivity, both through in the landscape management approach. Because park are isolated, and we thought there is a border. Inside park is one management, and just outside park is the another management. And the animals or moving things, birds, animals, they don't recognize this barrier that we created. Absolutely. As a Director General, I first visited Chita National Park. I do still remember outside the community council chair, saying, because I was new in the department myself. So my first question was, what you brought to know this engagement, local people in park management, part of the benefits you are getting. Then with the benefit sharing mechanism, the answer was that with this benefit sharing mechanism to the community, now wildlife damaged our crops, we didn't receive anything. Now we started receiving compensation. Relief compensation, and that money was going through that benefit sharing mechanism of the park. Absolutely. From the part of the park revenue. Absolutely. So there was a sense of some ownership feeling. Rhino, we had decreased to reach to 400. Now Nepal are over 752 rhinos. Tiger, 121 in 2009. Now we have 355 tiger across the country. So we have gaur bison. The number has again increased. We have this, the small one, the but important crocodile reduced to
so many. It's
now
not
it's more than
one
100
species.
So all those, I would say, all
species.
those the snow leopard itself. We made the first survey and it's around 400 now. It's a great achievement for Nepal. So it's a really good restoration of those species.
Fantastic. Dr. Sunita, do you have anything to add?
I just would like to add the zero poaching year. I think government of Nepal celebrated for a number of years.
That's true. I was the leader for that.
You were the Director General during that time. So that's what I want to add on that.
That's
Yes. So because government of Nepal celebrated, I think, continuously for a few years to have the zero poaching year, and I think that's a remarkable success for government of Nepal, but also all the stakeholders involved from national up to the local level. Without that connectivity and strong commitment and dedication, I don't think we have been able to achieve that.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, being a bird person, I cannot stop saying one success about birds also.
Yeah.
And that was a
Vulture.
Vulture, yes.
So UNDP, actually I led the project.
Okay.
UNDP funded through the small grants program.
Okay.
And we
restaurant. You were talking about the restaurant, yeah?
We started this
Vulture restaurant.
They're a good example of
community managed vulture restaurant.
Yes,
And so that is really fantastic. And a critically threatened species of vultures, and the numbers are rising.
Yeah.
So I will just add on the flagship species, mammals and things like that, a little bit of birds. That's really fantastic. So Dr. Sunita, I will just again go to you and UNDP work in Nepal. So UNDP works a lot on building the skills of government officials in Nepal. Do you think using scientific research, as you are very much affiliated with this scientific institution, do you think using scientific research, like understanding the benefits nature provides, can help governments make smarter policies and plan their budgets better?
I would say 100%. Even like government bureaucrats, I would say they are the scientists also. It's not that they are not, and they are scientists, and they are also making policy based on science. I just like to emphasize the science is not about like the modeling or the numbers. It's also about the science, even the science from the local people are also science, the local knowledge, indigenous knowledge, and the science we do, like reading the textbook, doing the modelings, calculating the models for like depending on the temperature, those are science. Right, and based on that, now the evidence is becoming so powerful that without evidence we won't be able to make any policy making. Like for instance, I'll just pick up this example from the vulture. We just see this conservation from a vulture perspective, right? But if we see this is so much into nexus, this relates to agriculture, this relates to community people, this relates to the forest, this relates to also health. So we are just the conservation policy makers are only focusing on one aspect, vulture and forest. But we also need to make other sectors like science available and put it on the table for the policy makers so that they can make one very evidence and then based policy making covering the all aspect, like all the sectors.
So as Nepal prepares for future environmental pressures, and there are many environmental pressures, as we know, urbanization, tourism, climate breakdown, etc. What institutional or policy shifts do you believe are most urgent? Because we can't remain on the status quo.
I think this is very much important part of the discussion. Now the conservation policy now we are working in the government of Nepal aren't changed since long time. We talk about buffer zone policy of 1996. The regulation has not been amended until now a single time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there are a few points that I would like to mention here. One, the first approach should be maintaining of the achievement what we have done in the past. Species conservation, ecosystem conservation, potential system management, all those kinds of things. No? Maintain that first, again, required resources, that is first. Second, coming to your previous question, linked also is your previous question is, how really now we can realize the benefits of conservation. People are contributing to conservation now. There are tiger increasing, there are rhino increasing, and they are facing the conflict, ongoing rising conflict of human wildlife kinds of things. So people, how we discuss or engage the coexistence between animal and plant, which is happening since time immemorial. But now we should focus on that. And one of the important component of this is how really we are able to deliver the financial benefit to the local people, to the local government, provincial government, central government. A third point is how do we align our conservation policies with local government and provincial government. So the issue is how we are going to engage local government and provincial government in park management system. What is their stake? In some country, for example, India, park management belongs to the states. So we are totally excluding that part. So that is second. Third is, let's say another point is, Nepal needs really now development. Development is our need. Conservation is also our priority. So how to balance the two issues of conservation development. And then I would say, that the use of technology, data, management kinds of things. Now we are not adopting. I work in controlling illegal wildlife trade. Now all the trade, one of the big scientists in IFA was saying 90% of trade, illegal wildlife trade has now been shifted into cyberspace. And we don't know how to operate it. So that is technological fact. And the most important, I think, is now Nepal can provide live museum of, let's say, national parks and outside forest area, protected system, forest area, conservation area, where we have achieved success in achieving all these ecosystem restoration, species, big, megafauna, everything.
So some institutional shifts because of the devolution of the government, way it has happened.
Yes.
We need to recognize the role that a local government has in managing natural resources, including protected areas, as well as the provincial government. I think that's very important. And some of the really old buffer zone regulations and buffer zone act dating back to 1996, they need to be revised.
Totally reformulated, maybe.
That's very important. That's very important. Or Sunita, please add.
Yeah, I'd like to add on this one, starting with this one, because I think the act, when we studied, I think the act was formulated when even I was not born, and still now I'm working on the same act, right?
But so, that has been amended, though.
Amended, but I think the world has changed quite a lot. We are now talking about the forest carbon, biodiversity credit, So, and telecoupling, so many things, but those concepts have not been able to, we have not been able to implement at the local scale here. So forest carbon, we are a little bit better, but biodiversity credit and others, we have not been able to explore much. And then in terms of conservation, we have done quite a lot, but we also need to think now how to, incentives has come quite a lot, but we keep hearing about the forest are degrading, the sal tree is lying there since 40, 50 years and no one is doing nothing. So I think I'm also in the favor of
utilization.
Yes, utilization of those. Yes, if we see all the developed countries, those forest is one of the major resource of their GDP, right? And for us, we have not been able to use these resources. Nepal, I think, is very much rich in terms of everything, in terms of water, in terms of forest, in terms of wildlife, in terms of people, everything. But we have not been able to take it forward, incentivize people, everything. So now we need to go beyond the bubble of conservation and go beyond this and incentivize. We often take it for granted because we have been using freshwater resource for free since many generations, right? But now water has been valued, but also we need to start putting, making people aware about the value that we have been using for free, and make people responsible that what we have been using should be valued and should be streamlined into the policy system. And in that one, the private sector should be on board. The blended finance or co-finance or multi-finance, whatever. So we need to bring that. We should not be all-time donor dependent. I think we have enough resources to generate that internal funding for our conservation. So,
Sunita, again to you. So modern life, the life you and I live, modern life puts a lot of pressure on our natural habitats, resources rather. Mm-hmm. What big changes do you think Nepal needs to opt to keep protecting its biodiversity while also supporting local communities? Mm-hmm. A little bit we discussed already, I think, part of this, but please.
Yeah, so what I really think is a lot of challenges we have been facing, and then we know Nepal, there is a different school of thought, but Nepal is going towards the dozer development. We know this everywhere in the newspaper. Yeah, and we also see all our the hills and everything, we see those are everywhere, but we still need development, right? Access to market, access to market is through the road. It's not that we do not have policy. We do have policy, but the effective implementation should be one of the criteria for all the development aspect. That is one. The other one is like, we know we are talking a lot about nature-based solution. It's been there since millennium, right? Nature-based, so all the solutions are nature-based. But now we need to, Nepal really needs to go ahead through, like, a little bit of capitalism. It doesn't sound good, but it should be like nature-based business. We need to promote it. We need to provide services.
I think in the industry itself, entering will not have. What activities are within that industry, and what are the factors, they are creating the negative impacts to the environment. It doesn't mean that we should violate the core value of conservation. Within remaining conservation core value, we can promote development or industry.
So, develop, but still conservation at the heart.
Yes, at the heart, that's true. We should not ignore the value of conservation.
I think we have agreed here.
But I would, I agree to some extent, but I would also like to put forth on the argument by indigenous people, because the most
that
of
is
the
different one, no?
Yeah. So because yes, so protected areas, especially the national park, like Chitwan National Park, other national park, Bardia National Park, people like indigenous people, Tharo people, they keep sometimes argue that those land were taken from them, like from generations like in 1970s. Now those land taken from them now is given to private sector. So like, their livelihoods were totally blocked because of the strict restriction to the national park resources. And now after several years, now those are given to the private sector. So they are not quite happy.
Now we have come towards the end of the conversation. This question is for both of you. So we know that Nepal is blessed with its rich natural heritage, from our forest, grasslands, wetlands, wildlife, from mountain tops to the lowland jungles. To conclude, can I ask you both about what you think Nepal should do to make the most of this rich natural heritage so that it benefits people? We have talked about this quite a lot. So that it benefits people, strengthens local economies, and helps us face urgent climate challenges. And where do you think partners like UNDP can add the most value in that journey?
Yes, so I think there are different kind of financing models for biodiversity conservation. So based on those case studies, science, we need to really build like sustainable biodiversity financing. We need to develop industry that is nature-based. So that is the first one. The second one is, I really liked it because I have been involved in global processes. So I think Nepal has done quite a lot. And then if we compare to Bhutan, when I was still small, we were thinking that Nepal are close friends and kind of like with the similar geography. Now we see they have developed they are quite ahead compared to Nepal. So Nepal should be really ahead in terms of getting the financial for their conservation efforts that they have put in. So it has to be brought up in the global fora, and then we really need to get that kind of like compensation or anything that we have been doing. So we cannot compromise conservation in terms of development. So that needs to be brought back. The other thing is like, yes, while doing this, we need to be very careful that the principles of equity and justice should be at the heart of this conservation or development sector. So these three, I really would like to emphasize going forward to UNDP. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think for me, I fully agree with her. But how we do that? Now Nepal is preparing Nepal Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan 2030. Let's contribute to include those elements within the plan, and the plan should be a very much multi-institutional agreement, multilateral kinds of things. All engage there, all contribute there, and which will guide Nepal up to 2050, not only 2030. I think it's a broader framework going up to the 2050
vision. Yeah,
I was, preparing for this podcast. I was just going through some of the notes provided, and I just looked at some of the really shifts, and really major shifts happened because UNDP funding was there. The CSUWN.
Wetland policy.
wetland
Wetland
project.
policy was built by support by UNDP.
UNDP.
And I also can share this, Imja Lake management. No,
management.
that is though different in the disaster
Yeah,
part, but
yeah.
national park also was there, so it was supported by
And
UNDP.
you talked about buffer zone. Government of Nepal brought buffer zone act and policy guidelines. And
Yes,
right, to implement those, UNDP
whole
supported
shift,
the
whole
entire-
paradigm shift was actually by that policy.
by that policy. So I think there is a need for another
Underused in the
UNDP
sport. Yes,
project here to have another big paradigm shift in conservation. So I think we are done for today's discussion. So today's conversation reminds us that Nepal's natural heritage is not just something to protect. It's a foundation for our future well-being and prosperity. For 60 years, UNDP has supported Nepal in advancing conservation, strengthening national parks and other protected areas, and improving the policies and capacities that make long-term stewardship possible. As Nepal looks to the future, it is more important than ever that institution leaders like my two distinguished guests on my left today and partners like UNDP continue to partner on solutions to keep our ecosystems healthy while improving lives of local people here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Baral, for the opportunity, and also to the